What's going on, guys? Nathan Lombardi here with Lambeau Media.
I'm Christian Bergman, former pitcher for the Seattle Mariners and Colorado Rockies.
And welcome back to another episode of the Walk It Off podcast on Walk It Off Wednesday. And make sure you guys subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give us a thumbs up on this segment if you haven't already. And make sure to follow us on Instagram as well at walkitoff_podcast. The link will be in the description. Next episode, we will later be joined by a very special guest, Tuffy Gosewisch. But before we get into that guest appearance, we have two major topics to talk about. We're witnessing a COVID-19 outbreak with the Miami Marlins. Just 1 or 2 weeks into the season just got kicked off, and we're already experiencing this with the team. And Patrick Mahomes obviously had breaking news yesterday, Tuesday. He is now part owner of the Kansas City Royals, so he has a big time part in Kansas City and in that city. But before we get into talking about Patrick Mahomes and how he's making history, let's talk about the Marlins COVID-19 outbreak for the team. This early on in the season, 17 players have been reported to test positive for the Marlins. So my biggest question about this is how it will affect the MLB and the rest of the league down the line, and even now. How is it going to affect the teams that the Marlins were supposed to play here in the next few days, here in the next few weeks? And how is it going to impact the playoff seeding down the line as well? Christian, what were your initial thoughts when you found out that the Marlins were experiencing a COVID-19 outbreak?
Well, obviously I knew it wasn't good.
Yeah.
And, I thought it was odd that, that there were some positive tests like over the weekend, and they just kind of voted to say, we'll just keep playing.
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of weird.
Yeah.
That you'd think there'd be like a standard protocol, but I guess that wasn't in the agreement.
Mm-hmm.
But either way, like, we've got this situation now. Personally, I was surprised that they started the season, just because of how quickly apparently this can spread. So that's kind of the case right now. And as soon as, I think the initial report was like 9 or 10 or something, and it's the number keeps getting bigger. As soon as there was 9 or 10, I was thinking, man, this is not good. I don't think the Marlins are going to be able to play for a while, because even with the 60 player pool, now it's up to, you said 17.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
It
was initially like 13 or 14, I think, and then 4 more were reported. Like, it just keeps on coming.
Yeah. So now you're, if you're a Marlins player who was in the pool and you've just had a major outbreak on the team, you just expect them to just parade in there and say, oh yeah, we're in this environment where, this infection apparently spread very quickly. You think people are just going to come in? No. So, each individual player is going to have their own thoughts on it,
Mm-hmm.
but there's the public perception of, the Marlins can't just, expect players to come in.
Yeah, their season was already put on pause. So.
Yeah, so they've paused the season, which I kind of thought was going to happen as soon as I saw that.
Yeah.
So, everybody knows how the schedules are set up. It takes forever to set those things up.
Yeah.
And to throw in something like this, and now a team can't play for presumably 2 weeks at least.
Yeah. Exactly.
I don't know how they're going to do that. So.
Yeah. And my big thing about this is, to be honest with you guys, I really don't think we're going to be able to see the full 60 games in this MLB season here in 2020. Whether you guys like it or not, we're just going to have to face reality. If we've already seen an outbreak with the team this early on, with the precautions that the MLB has already taken, with testing the players every other day, I think we're bound to see more and more outbreaks throughout the season with more and more teams. And luckily, in this scenario, the Phillies were lucky enough to not catch any cases from the Marlins during that series. But later on in the season, we might not be that fortunate. And these teams that catch an outbreak, when they play a different team in the series, we're not going to be as fortunate during those series and they're gonna have an outbreak as well, and it's gonna be like a dominoes effect. It's just gonna keep on going down the line with team to team. So
Yeah, I don't think they're going to let it go that far because
yeah,
even just the fear of that happening is
exactly.
going to keep them from allowing that to happen, I think. So, time will tell, but it's definitely not looking good in terms of I'm with you. I don't think we see a full game or a full 60 game season.
Yeah.
Uh, but we'll see.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. We have to deal with it. We can't really change anything about it. And now that we wrapped up talking about that unfortunate topic with the Marlins COVID-19 outbreak, let's transition into the Patrick Mahomes breaking news. He has now announced that he is now a part owner of the Kansas City Royals. He just signed the largest contract in sports history at just the age of 24. That was just recently. And yesterday morning, breaking news was announced as well that, like I just mentioned, he's now part owner of the Kansas City Royals. So he's making history of Kansas City. He has a big role in Kansas City, being the owner, a part owner of the Kansas City Royals, and a Super Bowl MVP with the Kansas City Chiefs. So he definitely has a big role and has a big name for himself, not just in Kansas City, but really in the whole USA. So that's something big for just age of 24 Patrick Mahomes. So that's interesting.
Yeah. How much of that contract that he just signed? How much of that is like in the form of a signing bonus? Do you know?
I'm not 100% sure, but it was it 503 mil or 403?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I
I
think
think it
I
was just
think
over.
like I
Yeah.
think
So
around
like,
like 470 million was guaranteed.
right. But
Yeah,
obviously that doesn't get paid up front. So,
right.
he's made around 10 million in his career so far.
Hmm.
Uh, so I'm kind of curious. I don't know if this will ever come out, but kind of curious, like how he, was able to get part ownership. And I mean, it's obviously awesome and
Yeah,
unheard of that someone so young is part of the ownership group of a
yeah,
team like that. It is going to be a small portion because like the current ownership group, like the largest one, they bought it for $1 billion, the franchise. So even though it's a small piece, it's still notable,
yeah,
and it clearly means that he's invested in
yeah,
Kansas City, as a whole. I think it's kind of cool that that an athlete invests in another sport like that in the city that he just committed so much to him. I'm curious how he was able to swing that, but it's cool
yeah.
nonetheless, I think.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think that baseball side of things came from his father. His dad had MLB experience with a few teams in the MLB. So I think that some of that came from his father, and it runs in the family. So I definitely think he had a word on that decision for Patrick Mahomes. But now that we wrapped up those two amazing topics about the unfortunate outbreak of of COVID-19 for the Miami Marlins and how Patrick Mahomes is now part owner of the Kansas City the Royals. So let's transition into the guest appearance of Tuffy Gosewisch. We're going to talk a lot of things: his baseball career so far, his journey, free agency, and life outside of baseball as well. So let's get into that guest appearance now.
Everybody, this week we are joined by my good friend and former teammate Tuffy Gosewisch. He was originally went to Horizon High School here in Scottsdale, Arizona. Went to ASU, where he went to the College World Series in 2005. and was named a semifinalist for Johnny Bench Award, which goes to the nation's top catcher. Was drafted that year by the Phillies in the 11th round. Since then, I had to kind of abbreviate this because you've been playing forever.
This is already too long. I don't know what.
Played over 1,000 minor league games and 137 games in the big leagues between Philadelphia, Toronto, Arizona, Atlanta, Seattle, Washington, and Milwaukee. Tuffy, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited.
Anyway, so with Milwaukee now, technically,
Yeah.
kind of been, what does your last 6 months really look like?
So spring training started. Everything's normal. I'm preparing to, probably start the season in AAA, San Antonio, and then halfway through spring training, they just say, "All right, you guys are done. Go home, and we'll tell you when to start again." And then, so I'm just at home getting ready for the season, preparing like I would normally prepare, basically in like January, something like that, and waiting for a call to say, "Hey, this is when camp's gonna, restart, and we're gonna do this in Milwaukee." And I ended up not being very patient, and I ended up calling the organization and saying, I need to know whether or not I'm gonna be playing this season, or what your guys' plans are, or who's gonna be there. And they said, right now it looks like we got 4 guys on the 40-man, and then we're going to bring a prospect to round out the 60-man roster. So it looks like as of now, you're not on the list to play. So at that point, I just kind of, put everything on hold. And after 16 years, I feel like I've had a good run, and the uncertainty of continuing to play and not knowing what's going to happen. You know how hard it is to like worry about getting a job in the off season.
Sure.
And I have a third child on the way now, so due in September, and I can't put my wife through another. She's been through 16 years with me, and I just can't do it another year with a third kid. So right now it looks like, unless they call me in the next couple of weeks, that it looks like it's probably it for me. But I'm okay with that, and I'm excited to move on and see what the next chapter looks like.
Yeah, man, you've had as I joke with you all the time, you've had a long career.
Yeah.
So, has it been, I know this is kind of like a, unusual time, but has it been kind of nice to, be at home and be with your family and stuff?
Yeah, it's been, the amount of time I've been able to spend with my kids is insane. I have almost a 3-year-old, almost a 5-year-old. And so, they're probably getting sick of me at this point, but here in Arizona, it's like 115 this next week. So it's kind of hard to get out of the house with the kids. But yeah, we've gone to California a few times, gone to the beach and hung out with my wife's family. That's about it. But the amount of family time we've had has been something that we've never experienced before. And, it's definitely new to all of us because we've never been under the same roof for this many days in a row. Right. And, hopefully things don't wear us out and rub each other the wrong way.
No, I'm sure you guys will be fine.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
So Christian mentioned a little bit earlier that you were drafted back in 2005 by the Phillies, and you've been playing professional baseball really since then. What would you say has changed the most in the game of baseball since you first got drafted in 2005, and in particular from your perspective and your experiences?
Yeah, I would say that, the biggest change has definitely been in the analytics and the data aspect of the game, and just how, I feel like when I got drafted, I bet you the majority of the GMs were former baseball players. I would say more than half of them were former baseball players, I would guess. And they made the transition to the front office. And now it's the complete opposite, where I think that the only former major leaguer who's a GM is Jerry DiPoto. And I think he's the only one right now out of 30 teams. And so that's definitely changed. And then, there was no such thing as an analytics department, I don't think. Maybe Oakland had one, There were very few teams that were looking at it. And we just didn't have the technology to measure everything that we do now. And so being able to break it down and and look at it and dissect it, I guess, deep down, is something that has definitely changed a lot. Back then it was more about, what does this feel like, or just going by what the eyesight showed you, and what the coach's eyesight showed him, and how does this feel to you on the mound, or how does this feel to you in the box, and then making adjustments from there.
Yeah, for
Do you
sure.
think it's good or bad? Or
So I think that yeah, no, I mean, so here's where I think it's going. I think that right now teams are still saying, like, okay, we need more data, we need more analytics, we need more technology. And I think that it's going to get to a point where it's like just way too much.
Yeah.
And then they're going to have to come back down and balance it out. You know what I
Right.
mean? But I think that right now where we're at is teams are still looking for more and trying to find more data, and they're hiring more analysts every year. And so I think that it's definitely going to go too far in the wrong direction. But then I think after that, people are going to realize, like, hey, okay, we need some balance here. Why don't we have some balance? Why don't we mix some baseball guys in with the data guys, and kind of collaborate on the best way forward?
Yeah, I think, like, to kind of piggyback off that, the biggest difference has been not so much in like scouting reports and stuff like that, because obviously, like, it's good to have lots of data and then, pare it down to what you
Yeah,
want to see. I think the bigger shift has been in how players are evaluated, as far as
yeah,
like who makes a team and who doesn't. I mean, I
yeah,
think at this point it's really coming down to who has a higher spin rate versus, who has the
right.
highest spin rate, who has the best launch angle, who has the best framing metrics. Like,
Without a doubt. I
but
mean, unfortunately, that's the way it is, and like that's why. I mean, that's one reason that I've had a hard time getting a job the last couple of years, is because, like, my framing metrics are good, but they're not elite,
mm,
And so the
I
other
disagree with
aspects.
that, by the way.
Thank you. Well, thank you, but um, it's like the intangibles, like stuff that you can't really measure, that I feel like are probably my strongest assets.
Yeah, no, for
They
sure.
they they kind of go out the window when all the people are looking at is numbers, and how these new metrics are put together. And so I've kind of, the last 2 years, I've had to change the certain things about the mechanics of how I catch in order to get more pitches, and it has worked. And
Sure.
whether or not you know it's hard for me to say how accurate some of that data is, because
Yeah.
there's, like, what if you have an umpire who just got in a fight with his wife or something, and he's pissed, and like
Yeah.
he's not going to call anything, you know what I mean? Like,
Right.
what or he something with the other catcher, he's got it, he's really likes the way the other catcher does something, and he doesn't like the way that you do something, and so you're going to get penalized for that, whereas it's not your fault for doing anything where you're losing strikes.
Right.
Yeah, for sure. So let's turn it back a little bit to a rather unfortunate time. You experienced a torn left ACL, which at the time put you out for the rest of the season. How tough was that for you, both mentally and physically, at that time?
Yeah, it was, without a doubt, the hardest thing that I've had to deal with in pro ball, because I had just, that was the first year where I was a starting catcher in the big leagues, and it took me 10 years to get there. And uh, I we were doing okay. I think we had a decent record at the time, right around 500, and we were, right in the middle of the season, and just had it ended very abruptly, and had to work back from that, knowing that I wasn't going to play again that year. And then it ended up costing me, um, a little bit of big league time the next season, because I had missed time and they had signed some other guys. So that was definitely a mental hurdle to overcome. But, in the end, I think that it made me stronger for
Yeah.
having to go through it. And I think that by the time that I was with Christian and in Tacoma and Seattle, that I had definitely made a huge leap forward, as far as like the mental side of the game, and being able to work with pitchers and things like that, because of what I had gone through in Arizona.
Yeah, and like you said before, that's something that I played against you, and you see people and opponents in a completely different light than when you play with them.
Yeah.
So once I finally played with you and we worked together, pretty much the whole year in 2017.
Hmm.
Like you said, one of the things that can't be measured is like the interaction between, and it wasn't just me, but we only really played together for one full year.
Yeah.
I've had other catchers who I've been with for multiple years, but we were able to build that same connection, I think, in such a short amount of time. There's no number for that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. There's no stat for that. There's no way to. I mean,
Right.
that's purely a feel thing, and something that can only be. I mean, it's even hard for managers to see that, but I think that managers probably, or coaches in general, have the best eye for that. But it seems like nowadays their opinion's not even really taken into consideration.
Right.
Yeah. So you experienced free agency in the past. Obviously, everyone's free agency process and experience looks different and forms out differently. What did your free agency process look like in your career thus far, and how is that for you mentally? And did you find yourself more on the patient side of things, or were you mentally worried that maybe you wouldn't find the right team for you and at the right time as well?
Yeah, free agencies. It's very tough when you're either a minor league free agent or not a guy who's going to get a guaranteed deal in the big leagues. As I mean, Christian's experienced multiple times, but I've had every experience free agency wise. The first year I was with the Phillies, I was supposed to be a minor league free agent. I re-signed before I technically became a free agent, so I went back there. And then the following year, I got traded. I ended up with Toronto for a month. After that, they tried to re-sign me before I became a free agent, but I went to free agency. I think the very first day that I could sign as a free agent, Arizona called, and being from Arizona, growing up here, like that was a no-brainer that I wanted to join them. And the opportunity was, that they had hardly any catching depth, and so it was just an opportunity I couldn't pass up. So I wasn't really patient there. And then I wasn't a free agent again until 2016. Actually, no, not even 2016. I got claimed by Atlanta, and then I was with Atlanta for 2 months in the off season. So I never even talked to anyone with Atlanta except one person in the front office, and then they let me go.
Right.
But after Seattle, I was a free agent. I got sweet talked by the front office in Seattle, and went re-signed there, and then they weren't exactly true to their word, and so got let go there like opening day of the season. So that's a new experience. Opening day,
Unfortunately,
everybody's
I
got
remember that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think anybody that was on that team probably remembers that. It was kind
Yeah.
of
It was very odd because it was
yeah.
the first day of the AAA season, right?
It was the day before opening day in
The day
Tacoma.
before opening day. Yeah.
Yeah, day before opening day in Tacoma, and yeah, they let several people go early in the year that year, where it was kind of like a head scratcher.
Yeah.
But so now I'm a free agent. It's the first week of the season, and everybody's got their roster set. And now it's like, oh shit, I got no job. Nobody's gonna need a catcher.
Yeah.
What am I gonna do? Like insurance, family, like all this
Right.
stuff you don't think about is a huge part of it. And so luckily I signed on there, and then the next 2 years, it was a much longer wait in the off season. 2018, 2019 off seasons where, I wait till December, January to because there's just not a ton of interest out there. And that's pretty nerve wracking, to be honest. You don't know if anybody's going to want you, what opportunity is going to be like. And then all these things are a lot different than when you're single and young and you got no
Right.
responsibilities. And now you got kids and a wife and a house and car payments and insurance, and it's just a tough spot to be in. So free agency, for a guy like me, is just really, really grind, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's something that, especially recently, with all the, arguing between the players and the owners as far as going into the season, that's what you just described uh, gets lost.
Yeah.
People don't see that because it's not public.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not shown anywhere. The struggle that you went through during that time, and just free agency in general. unfortunately, like those experiences were my only ones in free agency. I didn't have
Exactly.
any of like the quick, easy decisions.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, but it's nerve wracking, and you know, uh, like you said, if you're single, like it's whatever. You're just kind of
Yeah.
flying through life anyway.
Yeah.
You got responsibilities. I think it's important that people recognize that it's not just the
No.
$100 million players arguing over a couple
Right.
$1 million. It affects people like you who
Yeah. Well,
are caught in the middle.
it affects guys that the fringe players that affects them the most. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, I want to, if I'm that 25th, 26th guy on the roster, like, sure, I want to make my full prorated salary, but I don't want to, I don't want to miss a month of the season because we're arguing about it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's a much bigger deal. Like if you're making $10 million a year and this year you only make $3 million, well, I don't feel too bad for you. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like I, yeah, that's a lot of money you lost, but at the same time, you should be able to survive on $3 million a year.
Yeah, and I don't think that was ever. I don't think that was ever the argument. I don't think those guys who were only going to make $3 million were complaining about, oh, I'm only going to make my 3 million. It was the overall principle of, no, we had an agreement.
Oh,
uh,
without a doubt. I think
and
but I think that people, when people in the public see it,
yeah, yeah,
that's all they see is that these rich guys are fighting. You know
right,
what I mean? It's like a rich guy fighting against a rich guy. Like
yeah,
that's not the case. There's the fringe guys get hurt more than anybody else.
yeah. Absolutely. um, so kind of outside of baseball, what's something that uh, the people who, like, I know you pretty well from being around you for a couple of years, what's something people wouldn't necessarily suspect about you or wouldn't know about you
Yeah.
when they first met you?
Um, I don't know. Well, I'm kind of psychic actually, so you should know that. You should know this. Can you tell them the story about your wedding and how I just randomly
That's yeah,
guessed where
yeah,
you're going?
that's true.
You didn't
You know
tell
what though?
anybody.
You're not psychic though. You're very good at reading people and knowing
That
people, and through the years so that we'd played together, you kind of figured out, of all the places in the world, where I would be going on a honeymoon. But
correct.
to tell the story,
So we're at the wedding, and Christian hasn't told anybody. I don't think you told anybody where you're going,
no,
right?
very, very few people.
Okay, so you hadn't told. I mean, anybody that I talked to,
Yeah,
and you hadn't told your wife where you were going,
no,
right?
complete
And uh,
surprise.
and I was just like, "Hey, man, where are you going on the honeymoon?" He's like, "Ah, it's a surprise. I'm not telling anybody until we get on the plane." And I was like, "Oh yeah, I bet it's someplace crazy like Iceland or something." And he's like, "Who did you talk to? How do you know? How do you know that? That's some that's some bullshit." I was like, "What did I guess it?" And I was spot on.
Yeah, I
Iceland.
seriously thought someone had told you, because it was like, of all the places in the, most people go to the beach,
Yeah.
or
Right. Like why would I guess Iceland?
Yeah.
yeah,
Because you're insane and you think that there's monsters in Mount Shasta and that you eventually will get taken by a UFO. And
which
which, by the way,
current events.
New York Times, did you see the article
Which one? The
about the Pentagon saying that
Yeah,
there's craft from not from this planet?
yeah, I've been saying this for years, and there are people like, what's his name, the guy that had the radio show, Bob Lazar.
Or oh yeah.
Yeah, he's been a little more vocal on the issue than I have, but as you'll recall, I was very invested.
We had many conversations
Yeah,
about this.
That's awesome.
Most of them not sober, but that's it for another show. So I know. I mean, I don't know. That's something that people don't know about me, is probably that how interested I am in whatever anyone else is interested in, like no matter who or with, like, I want to talk about it. You know what I mean? Like if it was you and me and Beckham and Vogelbach, we talk about aliens, but we talk about like Vogelbach's obsession with fishing. Beckham would show us the deer that he's feeding on his ranch so that he can go out and shoot them later that year. I mean, it's anything anyone's doing, I'm trying to figure out why they're doing it and why they're so passionate about it.
Yeah, well, that's part of what makes you a good player and a good catcher, especially. That's what's gotten you this far. So
Thanks.
Hopefully, hopefully something turns up for you, this season. Or well, I mean, if nothing happens this season, what about next season? Anything? Or are you just kind of over it?
I'm not overplaying. No,
Yeah.
it's not. I still like the game. I still like those 3 hours where you're between the lines.
Right.
It's the other part of the game that I don't know if I can handle much anymore. But I've already got some contacts for post playing career that I'm exploring right now, and hopefully one of those pans out here soon, and I can jump on board with a company that I really like. But we'll find out. We'll find out in the next couple of weeks if that's happening. But I think that in general, I need to take a break from the on-field part of the game and just step back and see what it's like not to be on the field.
Yeah, for sure, man. Well, hey, I really appreciate you coming on, and best of luck to you, and we'll keep in touch.
And now that we wrapped up that amazing guest
Thanks.
appearance of Tuffy Gosewisch, let's transition into the fan question for this week from Twins Content on Instagram. He asks, who will benefit most from the 16-team playoff format for this 2020 season? It's a new format. It was originally less teams, but they made it more teams since the season was shortened in this 2020 season. And I'll kick it off. I just think it's the teams that are on the lower end of each division. I don't really think teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers benefit from this as much, but I think it's more of teams like the Mets and the lower end teams that benefit from it the most, that weren't as much predicted to make the playoffs in this 2020 season, but now are because of that playoff format got extended. Christian, what are your?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference, because essentially, more just over half the teams get into the playoffs. But,
Right.
Even when you get into the playoffs, the difference maker is how much depth you have. So,
Right.
when you're playing a 5 and 7 game series, you got to have, your pitching's got to be good. Your offense has to be firing.
Right.
So if you don't have, the personnel to win a 5 or 7 game series, just because you got in the pool, I guess, along with half the other teams, I don't think it really makes a whole lot of difference. I still think that the better teams are gonna, come out on top in the end. I don't think you're gonna get a super random team, going all the way. So,
Right.
but I mean, I guess it gives you a chance.
Yeah. Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. And our answers were more straightforward because it's really anyone's game during this 2020 season. Really anyone can benefit from that in this 2020 season because it really helps out all teams. But like I said, more of the lower end teams rather than the better teams on top, like the Yankees and the Dodgers. But that really wraps up everything for the fan question for this week. An amazing guest appearance of Tuffy Gosewisch in Week 5, Episode 5 of the Walk It Off podcast, talking about the breakout of COVID-19 for the Miami Marlins. Patrick Mahomes now being a part owner for the Kansas City Royals and all that type of stuff. So thank you guys for tuning in to Week 5, Episode 5 of the Walk It Off podcast. And stay tuned for next week's episodes as well.
Thanks, guys. See you next week.